So David, we're here this morning in a rainy Market Drayton.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to get the same winter as we had last year, so whether that's a good omen or not. Yeah, we're in just North Shropshire, South Cheshire border. Yeah.
Okay, so before you joined us with Grasstech designing farm buildings, you worked with Fowler Gilbert.
Yes, I worked with them for 8 years. So yeah, a lot of my knowledge I had before I came to Fowler Gilbert, but yeah, since working here, yeah, the scale increased massively. So worked on some really big projects with them.
Okay. So we're here in the middle of the country in a strong dairy area here. So there's a lot of work for
Yeah, a lot of
dairy farmers.
Yeah, but they predominantly do all types of agricultural buildings. Yeah, cubicle sheds, parlours, and they've got a dairy project on the go at the moment. So yeah, used to working with dairy farmers as well as arable.
Yeah. So I suppose we've done videos in the past with some shed manufacturers, so we might just see what's different here and what the different setups here are and how things are done.
Yeah, they obviously have to comply with the UKCA, or they cover that compliance. So that's quite interesting to see how they achieve that, and what's involved in it. It's quite an expensive process for them to achieve it. So yeah, it'd be good to see how they do that.
Okay, so I suppose Lee will take us on here anyway, and we'll have a tour of the setup.
Yeah, he'll show us around, won't he?
Okay, great. So Lee, let's do a walk through your facility here. What are we going to see first?
Well, we'll go through this first section of the yard here, and the first bit really is goods in. So we're going to have a look at that, and then we'll take you through the workshop.
Yeah. Would you get many deliveries a day?
Yes, constant steel in and out all day long. Through other bits that we've got going on with Trent Fasteners over there, we've got the stock of fibre cement over here now as well. So we've got a monstrous amount of stock of the fibre cement roofing material. Certain things changed in the market and we sort of had to become then a stockist of that product, so that's what Trent stocks. Unfortunately I haven't got the room over there at the moment, so it's stored in our building here. Yeah. So basically what we've got is, this is our goods in building, which as you can see is a bit chock-a-block at the moment. So all vehicles come in, it's a one-way system. We come in here, we go into the building, we then unload the steel. So the raw steel that we buy in will either come in, I suppose 70% of what we buy is presently cut to size. And that's mainly because our saw line that we've got presently isn't capable of really keeping up with the demand of the workshop. So 70% of what we buy is cut steel ready to go in. We'll de-nest that when it comes in to the site. We stack it all up into each specific job. Everything is checked that we've got the right quantity of material, as well as the mitre cuts are correct or the lengths are right. And then once we've got a complete job, we will then take that job through and into the workshop, and then we'll follow that through. In terms of fibre cement and stuff, that is all stored here. Out the far end of the building we keep a large timber stock out there as well, and that's where all the other materials as well will come in and be unloaded, and sort of we have a holding area for each building before it goes out. So as you know, a building is like a jigsaw puzzle of lots of different pieces. All of them materials will get stacked up in an area ready to go out, and then we'll load. It comes through to here.
Yeah.
The loads are then checked that we've got all the materials on by the guys from the office, and then obviously out the door and away it goes.
Commodity wise, I suppose we're maybe coming into autumn 24 now. We've seen a big change in commodity prices. So steel, what way is that at the moment, steel prices?
Steel's actually in a good position at the minute. Unfortunately not quite as low as what it was pre sort of COVID, Russia, Ukraine issues, but it is probably as low as it's likely to get, we believe, at the minute. We've certainly felt the pain of when it was right up there, and not just the cost, but getting some of the material as well.
Yeah.
We had massive issues with cold roll, which is the purlins in the roof of the building, or the steel side rails. That was a massive issue. Basically you could not get that product, and if you could, you were paying up to 2-3 times the value of what it originally was.
Yes.
So that caused us massive difficulties.
Yeah.
But ultimately everything seems to be back on track now, so fingers crossed we're heading in the right direction.
Your steel then, does that originate in the UK? I know in Ireland everything is imported, but is it coming from foundries in the UK or?
A lot of our stuff is from Spain. We're dealing through merchants in the UK obviously, but a lot of our steel is really coming from Spain. I think the steel industry over here is obviously struggling at the minute, but the bulk of our material is coming from Spain.
Right. shot blasted and primed or not, or do you do all that work here?
A little bit of both, really.
Yeah.
Depends on what the finished product's likely to be. If the building itself is going to be galvanised, then we bring that steel in raw. If we are painting on site here, which we do, we will bring the material in shot blast, which is why that building is very important to us, because now we've got undercover storage for shot blasted material. So we'll bring all that in shot blast, we will then fabricate the material, and then ultimately we can paint it. We don't clean anything in-house anymore like we did in the very, very beginning. Everything is brought in shot blast that is going to be a painted finish.
Okay, yeah, fine.
It's quite a big site here. What sort of acreage?
Site-wise, well, here actually, when we were over in Middlewich in Cheshire, we had about an acre and a half of land there with buildings. We outgrew that massively, as you know, so we moved over here, and this is a 5-acre site that we've got. There is a bigger picture because we've got a development site over there. Obviously, you've already seen Trent Fasteners that we've tucked in the corner, so we have got the room to expand as well. But presently, we're occupying about 4 acres of the 5-acre site.
Okay, great.
Good. Yeah, should we have a look inside?
Yeah. So fibre cement, is it one supplier?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the market sort of changed. One of the main suppliers changed their product range from what we know as Profile 6, and they moved across to a different profile. Jury's out on that one. I'll wait and see a little bit how that one pans out. There have been some good reports on it, actually, but my gut feeling is it's not ideal for our market over here. So we're sticking with Profile 6, which we've gone with a company called Swiss Pearl. They've changed the way that they work. They used to be Sembrit, as we would have known them over here, but they've changed the way that they work, and they're through stockists now, hence why Trent has had to buy and become a stockist, and we buy now through Trent Fasteners. So.
Right, okay. From, say, a percentage perspective, farmers using fibre cement versus your steel cladding, what percentage would you use it on the roof, farming wise?
85%
Yeah.
of the buildings that we do have got fibre cement on the roof. As far as the product goes, there are uses for single skin tin, but ultimately I don't think you can really beat fibre cement for the majority of uses of an agricultural building. You know, it's a breathable product to a degree. It helps massively with condensation. It's actually slightly cheaper than box profile tin. The lifespan and the warranty is about 5 years longer as well. So all in all, it sort of ticks all the right boxes. It's only really when you get into the coloured ranges, or if you need something to completely combat condensation, you'd have to move more to a composite panel material.
Okay.
That was probably slightly different in Ireland. Maybe the box profile product was less money than fibre cement. Would that be traditional?
Yeah, it has been.
In the UK, we've always found that fibre cement has been running at a level or slightly cheaper than a box profile. I don't know why that is, but for an agricultural building, yeah, I think fibre cement is a far better product.
We notice it the most, I suppose, if you're doing a building that's got specific planning rules and there has to be a coloured element to the roof, that's when really the painted range of fibre cement is sort of certainly up there then, or slightly above at the moment the box profile sheeting. So if it's natural greying material, then fibre cement for us is what we will promote.
Yeah. Okay. So was this shed here when you came, or is this all fabricated on this site?
So yeah, this was just a greenfield site completely when we come. We basically went through the process of putting planning in to build our own site. We got the planning granted, and then ultimately between us, this has been built. And it's very much a purpose-built one-way system. So the material, like I say, it will come into this building here, and then it will go through its one-way system, which we'll go through in a second and show you, and then it comes out the far end. And it's very much like a conveyor belt almost. When it comes out the far end, it is the fabricated item ready to go.
Yeah. Good. What size shed?
This is 110 foot wide, or and a 108.
Nine bays long, 20-foot bays long, so
180 foot long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And then our workshop is pretty much the same size, about 10 foot narrower.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, so yeah, the process, the steel comes in. We'll store the steel as it's raw form in these racks here, and then as that steel comes in, once we've got an element of the project that we're looking to manufacture next, so whether, well, So that now will be a building. So the bottom 2 layers there are the rafters, the bits up in the roof, the tops are the posts. The posts will go into this first pen here. In this first pen, what we do there is we check the length of all the material, and that basically pops all the holes in that the posts have at the top that the rafters then connect to.
Yeah.
So we've got a punch. We've also got big rotor broaches over there as well for the stuff that we need to drill inside the web of the steel. But that's the first section of the processing here. From there, that material will get just stored in the middle, and then it will go accordingly into each one of the welding pens. So in here we've got 4 active welding pens. We've got a parts pen at the top where we make all the little bits and bobs that bolt together and re-weld it together. We've got another parts building over here where we make all the bits that we weld on, basically, to hold everything together. Yeah. So once the material's gone into the welding pen, they work from a set of drawings. I'll show you the Tekla system when we go in. But the drawings that they work to are a full detailed fabrication drawing. So everything is fabricated to that. All the parts that we have made for this particular project will be welded to. Various checking methods along the way. If there's any parts left at the end, we know there's a problem, there's something we're missing. It will then go to the middle of the building and go through a series of processes of checking. We check the welds, we check the thicknesses, we check the material, we check all the measurements. And once it's gone through all them checking methods, it effectively goes out them doors. It goes left if it's going to the galvanising plant, because that can stay outside until we load and send it. And if it's going to the paint shop, right in the very distance, that's the paint shop. So we can store the material in an undercover area on the right, just out of that door. And then as and when the next project's ready to go in, we will take it in and paint that up there.
You mentioned you get your steel cut. Is that cut in Spain, or are you cutting
No,
the smaller
everything's
lengths?
cut here.
Okay, so
well, not here on site, but everything is either cut here on site or by the stockholders.
Okay, yeah.
And the same again with the shot blasting. The shot blasting element is done at the stockholders.
Okay.
And then we can bring that material in, sheeted up, so no matter what the weather, it will never see a drop of rain before we put paint on it.
That's fine.
Part of the process we talked about earlier was the steel and the sizes, and Lee mentioned about having it cut. Standard stock lengths of bar, that's the trade term for it, comes in, is it 12, 14, 18 metres, and part of the CAD program that we looked at, you can utilise stock lengths of bar to get the most efficient cuts. So when they send it to the stockholders, they will calculate which is the best bar to use at which length to generate the cuts that Lee's looking at.
Wastage.
Yeah, so it's actually a bit more cost effective sometimes to let the steel stockholder calculate the job sizes rather than Lee buying in stock lengths of 12 metre bars but then not being able to cut a precise quantity out of it. So it sometimes is a lot more efficient just to let the stockholders.
The amount of waste we produce is very minimal, in fact.
Yeah, it needs to be.
Yeah, and use a selection of stockholders as well, not just one company, use several different companies because some specialise in different products. So it's nice to have that choice to be able to cut the bars. Just makes it more efficient.
So what are we going into here, Lee?
So what we've got in here, this is where we make all the parts, the bits that I was just mentioning. We will take a complete project, and if we go back to the Tekla system again, the Tekla system in the office will produce a set of parts drawings, and each one of them drawings is for every single piece of steel that is bolted or welded to the fabricated item. So in here there are different methods of doing it. We have got in fact a new machine here, so these two machines are sort of operational, and these will crop the material to length. So we will buy the flat steel in its raw form at sort of 6 metres in length. We then crop all these parts into whatever shape and size are required, and then we will punch the holes accordingly. So we'll start off really producing blanks like this. So that's where the material itself, that would have been the width of the standardised material, and obviously we will then crop that into the length that is on each one of these drawings. So from a drawing perspective, that's sort of what we're working with.
Yeah.
It will give every dimension of not just the size and shape of the material and the grade of the steel, but it will also tell us exactly what hole we want where.
Yeah.
And then this part itself will form part of the fabrication drawing as we go through the process, and that will say literally that, you know, if this was a piece of steel, that has got to be welded at that point exactly there. So that's the cropping process. In terms of then punching holes, there is an element of the machine then will punch the holes accordingly. So if I take this here, this is a standard tube end here for a bracing tube. This is for a galvanised building, so these aren't actually bolt holes, these are air breathing holes so that the tube is vented when we send that product to the galvanisers. But ultimately there is a big punch in the end here, and you put that material on and it literally comes down and punches that steel out. Yeah,
it's impressive thickness to be punching.
It is. We can crop up to just over 25 mil here. It's very hard on the machine, so a lot of the 25 plus in thickness we will get profiled and brought into us by laser.
Yeah.
But generally anything sort of 20 mil definitely and below, we will do all into this here.
Yes.
We're looking at the options of different things. A plasma table is really the next one to look at for us. There's a massive level of investment with that, and I don't know whether it's exactly suited. It certainly is for standardised parts, so standard sheeting rail cleats or purling cleats that we will use thousands of every month. That would be ideal, that you can press the button on, you can walk away, you can come back and you can empty them ready-made parts off the machine. But with the CE marking, or now the UKCA, every building is actually bespoke anyway. So a lot of the cleats, a lot of the parts, they're actually specifically designed by an engineer for snow, wind loadings, whatever it may be, of the site-specific requirements. So a lot of the time we're making bespoke parts for the bespoke building. So that's where these come into their own.
Yeah.
So then following the process, like I say, once it's done its final checks, we then go out the far end of the building. So we'll shoot out there and have a look at that.
Yeah. You've quite a few forklifts. How many have you?
I don't actually know. Yeah, I think from a forklift point of view, we've probably got 8 or 10 forklifts around the place here.
Yeah.
We looked at the possibility of installing a gantry crane.
Yeah.
I do see the benefit in a gantry crane, but unfortunately I do find them relatively slow.
Yes.
Because what we will find is, as a lot of our fabricated items are in and out of the pen fairly quickly, I think you'd have to have 3 cranes in this building just to keep up really with
such a big building as well.
Yeah, because you're going to have people waiting basically for the crane. So we find that forklift works better with our scenario, especially because we've got such a wide building.
So all your welding, it's done manually obviously. Is it MIG or what?
Yes, everything's MIG, yeah. So each welding pen has got 2 welding sets in it. On this side of the building we tend to do the rafters, which is the long ones in the ceiling, and they've got a little bit more fabrication or welding time on them. So on the bigger stuff, like when we fabricate these rafters that are in this ceiling here, we would have 2 welding sets at what we call the big end, because there's a lot more welding to go on at this end. And basically they start at each end and they meet in the middle, and then they keep rolling the material in the process, so you're always welding in the best position.
So basically they're grabbing off of that stock behind. Every time they weld one, then they're moving that away, grabbing another one.
So the raw material comes from the back onto the trestles. They then go through the process of marking that out, which are all the chalk marks you can see. And then they will weld all their parts to it. When that is finished, it will then come to a holding section in the middle, which is this set of trestles here. One of the checking guys will come along then and they will check every single part, measurement, hole centre, you name it, that's checked. And then when it's done that, it will then go into a stack, and when we have a full forklift lift or side loaders lift, it will then go out the door. And then when we come out here, like I say, we go that way for the trailer for the galvanising plant. Or the raw material is then held in this sort of lean-to building here, ready, dry, to go into the paint shop.
And are you shot blasting your steel or
no? Everything comes in shot blast.
shot blasted? Sorry, yeah, okay, yeah,
So,
fine. That's fine. So what percentage of steel gets galvanised, say, from a farmer's perspective?
It's a good 50-50 really.
Yeah.
We've got, because we do so many buildings for such a variety of uses, anything sort of livestock wise we recommend and will normally be galvanised. But a lot of the time grain storage buildings or workshops, people don't bother, they stick with a painted building, which I think for the majority of the uses of a grain store or a workshop building, it's certainly very nice to look at a nice shiny galvanised building, but it's not necessarily needed.
From a costing purpose, you would give a varied cost for galvanising and painted. So if somebody requested a painted as standard, you could potentially give them the option to have it galvanised. So
yeah, we will always quote a painted building. We will always give an extra overcost for galvanising, and when we do the calculations, obviously there is a cost element to the shot blasting and the paint, which we then deduct accordingly and in lieu of the galvanising cost. So yeah, and it's good for us because I think with us being a volume producer, I think we would struggle if everything was painted. We would struggle to keep up with that on site here.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice that the pressure's already on the paint shop, with only doing a 50-50 really. But
Okay, let's have a look at the paint shop.
Yeah.
So what's the process here, Lee?
the process is the raw material comes in, as you can see, some of it's on that rack there. So again, we tend to try and keep everything grouped in its own project.
Yes.
So everything with that project reference will come into the building, and then accordingly he will take each piece of material and it will go through the painting process. So everything is sprayed. The material or the paint that we use is a high build semi-gloss primer. It's a one coat system, which is the best product that we've found in terms of coverage and lifespan. But it is a one coat system. Then that, like I say, we'll paint that material, and then once it's painted and cured or dried, it will then go out of the building and be ready to be loaded to go out.
Okay.
We try and make sure that the painting process of the painted material is not stored here for a long period of time once we've painted it, because what we have found is lay down, it's designed to be stood in its position, but lay down we will find that there will be an element of watermarking if it's lay around a little bit too long.
Yes.
Not that it won't come off, but it's just, you want a nice pretty shiny shed when it turns up.
Yeah. How long does it take for it to dry?
Basically a day's painting, there's a day's drying.
Yeah.
It is a little bit quicker than that in the summer.
Yeah.
If we ever had a summer.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
is there a standard Fowler and Gilbert colour, or is it any
You can have any colour you want. We would prefer you to always have our green, which is our standard colour, but we will paint pink if you want a pink shed. Yeah. So
Is this a standard, the grey, the off grey white in here, is that a standard paint?
it is. This is actually a primer that's going to go. This is an industrial building that we're doing. So this building here is primed. It's a slightly different primer. It's set up ready for what we call intermescent paint. So there's a fireproof paint that is applied to the building when it's in situ to satisfy the requirements of building regulations. So we will put a special primer on that, and then when it gets to site, there is the guys that will visit site and create that special paint.
Okay, fire resistant or whatever.
Yeah, and it will give whatever the requirement is. Building regs may say in this scenario, because of the site conditions, they might require 30 minutes or 60 minutes fire protection, and that paint will be put on accordingly.
Okay.
Which all forms part of a system with cladding rails and slotted sleeves for fire, or thickness of cladding and material that goes on the outside.
We've seen the fabrication process and obviously the painting now. You do industrial buildings as well as agricultural? Is there a percentage?
Yes, probably about 15% of what we do is industrial. It may be creeping a little bit more than that now. The majority of what we do, we started out with agricultural buildings. We've always liked doing the agricultural buildings, and we've stuck really with the majority of our work with that. Obviously there is the element of our own site that we're developing over there, which is all industrial, but we're quite fussy with industrial projects and pick and choose who we want to work with, really. I think we've certainly got on well with farmers since we started.
But again, you probably agree with this, part of the UKCA and the CE marking originally puts you in good stead to do industrial buildings because of the regulations and the slight rules involved in industrial, so it's made you sort of multitasking in that respect that you can do.
Yeah, I think it really sort of changed the marketplace when it first come in. We were quite lucky in one sense because we already did all the processes that were required. The only bit we didn't do is technically keep a paper trail of that nut and bolt and where it originated from. That was the little bit that we didn't do. It's a bit like food in a restaurant, how you have to be able to trace every single element of what's gone in to make that pie all the way back to where it come from. And it's the same with the UKCA now, or what was CE. So we were already doing the processes in terms of engineers' design and making sure the bracing was correct and the building itself was strong enough. So that didn't come as a big shock to us. The bit that did was probably the paper trail that was involved behind it. But it is good because it does stop a lot of your rogue builders out there being able to just basically knock a bit of steel work up, and we've all seen it in the newspapers, buildings that have fell down because they haven't been braced correctly, or the steel isn't the right grade of steel, and it stopped a lot of that happening, which is fantastic, really.
And some insurance companies now, I believe in the UK, they won't stand by a building if it's not UKCA.
No, in fact, I think most now are basically stating that it has to be UKCA. And certainly there's certain criteria for farm assurance as well that's got to be met, and I think it's important that we get the rest of the insurance bodies over the line on that, because that's really the last bit that will stop all of these buildings being made effectively illegally.
Just as I see there, gutters, Lee, what's the gutters you use typically?
Again, we're a good 50-50 really on the gutters. We use this here is steel box gutter, so this is a galvanised gutter. This system is designed to span the width of the bay, so it's great in terms of, by spanning the width of the bay of a building, all the pressure and the loading is on the actual steel. So where you will see buildings where they start sagging at the eaves level, where the gutter normally is, this takes a lot of the weight away from that, so it helps with that. It's a great product. It's designed to ultimately last the lifespan of the building, really.
Okay.
It doesn't bow, twist and warp in the sun. It is a great product, but ultimately it is a little bit more expensive than PVC.
Yeah.
We use a deep flow PVC system, so it is very good, but ultimately it is still PVC. So this is about £4 per linear metre more expensive than a PVC system, which I think, if you've got something that lasts the life of the building, it doesn't bow, twist, warp, change colour in the sun.
Yeah.
For me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So timber next, another component of a lot of sheds.
So timber, we stock every foot length of Yorkshire boarding, which is the 6x1 boarding that goes on the side of the building with sort of, a 6-inch board and an inch gap. So we stock every foot length of that, and then we stock all the purlins and sheeting rails. So your typical 5, 7 and 9x3 timbers at really 15, 16 and 20 foot lengths. We deal directly with the mills on this because we buy so much of it. We've probably got 15, 20 Arctic loads every month of timber in and out of this place. So there's a lot going through here. Again, timber to Z purlins, I suppose there is a ratio there. I would say if we took the industrial buildings away from the scenario and concentrated just on agriculture, I'd say again we're probably a good 50-50 on that. Downside timber wise is you will get, especially on a 20-foot bay, you will get that element of bow, twist and warp. It is a natural product, and unfortunately nowadays timber's grown that fast in comparison to what it was 20-30 years ago. You will get a lot more movement with timber than ever before. But luckily it was a material that saved us during COVID in the Ukraine.
It was available.
You couldn't get Zeds.
Yeah.
A significant difference between Ireland and the UK is that we standard 15 foot and 20 foot, 6.1 and 4.572 bays. Ireland possibly a little bit more, 16 foot, 4.8 metre bays as standard. So the stock in the UK is slightly different.
Yeah, they are a standard. Yeah, albeit the world is metric, we actually standardise timbers in imperial measurement.
Yeah, because it's been about for such a long time.
Yeah, good.
So again, this is the last sort of holding area of material now, so anything in terms of picked fibre cement orders will come outside. The majority of the time we get the concrete panels delivered directly to site. There are the odd scenario, especially if we're sending buildings to, I don't know, Orkney, Shetland and the islands, we want a complete package. So we'll have the concrete panels delivered here and then we will put all of them together on the wagon.
So deliveries, say any to Orkney Islands or wherever, do you do your deliveries yourself or is that all subcontracted?
A little bit of both. We've got 2 Arctics that we run constantly, so they're out all the time, and then we do use outside hauliers as well. Sometimes it can work out cheaper for us. Like I say, a lot of our work does go into Scotland, and certainly up the top end. So sometimes it can work quite nicely that a haulier has brought some timber down to us, and then we can backload a building back up the road. So.
Yeah. And say the erection process then, are you doing that in-house or is that subcontracted?
Yeah, well, a little bit of both actually. So we've got 2 in-house teams ourselves, and then we've got about 5 or 6 teams that are regularly or always working for us, should I say, on a subcontract basis.
Okay.
We will do really as much or as little as required on site. We will do a complete turnkey project where we will get involved in all the groundworks, the stoning of the site, the concreting, the electrics, the camera systems. So we will get involved with as much or as little. You know, we can just supply the building only, or we can just put the building up.
Okay. So I suppose, look, you have a big office infrastructure as well and technology in terms of how things are drawn. So we might have a look at that and what software you're using and why it's used.
Should we go and have a look?
Yeah. Lee, you have a weighbridge.
So the idea of the weighbridge really was to monitor what we've got coming in and out of site, not just from a steel perspective, but if I use an example of galvanising, galvanising is all charged for by the weight. So we will send our steel out, they will weigh it on the way in, they load it and weigh it on the way back out, and that's how we get charged accordingly.
Okay.
So it's a checking method to make sure that we're not paying for weight that we haven't sent. It's also a way of checking if there is material missing on a load coming in. So for argument's sake, if we've got steel coming into the yard, this will have four cameras all the way around when it's completed, and we will know then if there was 10 bars and each one of them bar was a ton each, but we've only got 9 ton recorded coming in. It's just another
it's good
method to prove that we haven't had the material.
Yes.
And I know it sounds a bit daft, because how can you lose a ton of steel? But when you've got 10 Arctics a day bringing steel in, it can soon get lost, or missed.
And then the other, with the cameras obviously, it's nice to be able to view the load as well when the load's going out as a quality control check, just to check that yes, there's the packs of roof sheets have been loaded. And
it's become quite, because we have got the cameras on the office here, and that has been quite handy, because quite often we'll send something out, a customer will ring up and say, I'm not sure I've had my flashings, you know. Well, we can show that we've sent them out, because you can actually see them on the load.
Yeah.
Good. So that helps.
Right.
So should we go in the office?
Yep. So your weighbridge
So this is
facility
the
here, or
weighbridge
you're
office,
recording
yeah.
here?
We're just in the throes of sort of completing that and setting it up.
Yeah, nice view down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all goods in will be handled here.
Yeah.
It's also a way that we can get the paperwork in the office, get everything signed off. The guys then are informed that the material is about to come onto the yard, and then we can obviously sort accordingly.
Okay.
Then in terms of main operations, this is the main operations office. So everything in this office here is handled from an after sales point of view. So the building, as a customer, you've bought the building from us and signed the contract. From that point on, everything is handled in here. So there's a series of processes. All all the quantifying of the materials is handled in here. That comes after the building has been drawn, but we will also organise all the foundations, all the erection on site, all the groundworks, whatever it may be. Everything is really organised from this office. Sales-wise is through there.
Yeah. The TV screens then, why the tree?
These have become quite handy actually, because a lot of our systems that we run have got all of our projects on. So if I'm involved, or some of the other people that are involved in specific projects, or we're talking about what we're doing when and what we need from a fabrication point of view, whether it be tonnage of steel work for the workshop or whether it be site works for the guys that we've got on site, we have them systems running on there live, and it makes it quite easy that we can come in here and everybody can see it that is working, whilst some of the people like me, for argument's sake, that's running particular projects, I can sort of chop and change and move things around.
Okay.
While discussing it, really.
Okay. Visibility, it's like a whiteboard. But
it is, yeah, and
better.
we can also put drawings on there, and it helps, you know, when you're trying to explain things, certain things, and training as well. That helps.
Yeah, great.
So then we've got the drawing office. So in here is where we detail everything in terms of building-wise, what we're doing. We can also be involved in here as well with the groundwork side of things. That makes life a little bit easier. So we use a package called Tekla for all the steel detailing that we do. Neil has been in the industry his entire career, back to when he was drawing with chalk and slate. Steve, yeah. A little bit better nowadays because the Tekla system that we use is state of the art. It was used to design and build the Wembley Stadium. It is fantastic in terms of detail in the building, and it's a 3D modelling package. So what we do with this package is, for argument's sake, what would have originally taken Neil back in the day a week to draw, he can now draw in a matter of hours. From that, this then produces a set of detailed drawings, and we can itemise each product out. So we can separate the timber out, we can separate the steel out, and we can do a complete assembly list of each item. So it gives effectively a shopping list of then each material that we require to build that building.
Yeah. Did that start as a CAD drawing, a flat CAD drawing?
So it basically starts as a blank canvas. In fact, there is an element here where if we're working with you guys, it's fantastic because you will have plotted the site out. We can bring all of that information and put it into our system. And if it's an extension building, especially with the software that you guys use on site, we can input all of that data to here, and we've got almost like a starting grid to work from. From that, every single piece of material is drawn individually on here. So if you, James, if you can zoom in on, or put a cut on the end of the building there.
Is this only for jobs you win, Lee, or are you doing this to price jobs as well?
No, this is only really for what we win.
Yeah.
There is another package that we use to help for quoting purposes,
Yeah.
but it's very basic in comparison. We'll do planning drawings with this, as well as what we will, which is basically a shell that we will produce, not a detailed drawing. But if you zoom in there, James, at Eves, you can see every single plate, nut, bolt, washer. It details absolutely everything. And then when we finish this, we can literally, by the click of a button, we can produce a list that gives us every shape, size of material, as well as what the length of the bolt is, the width, the grade of material. It produces all these lists that we then work with.
A huge library.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's just the materials involved in that one building.
Yeah.
It's all flat size, and then you've got all the shafts and stuff there.
Yeah, so this is the larger material list. For argument's sake, nuts and bolts. This is an itemised nuts and bolts list there.
This element of the background stuff that's going on is called BIM, if people have heard of this terminology that's getting used more and more now,
Yeah.
building information modelling. So Tekla produces all of these BIM drawings, which are full 360 that you can zoom into. it's now being integrated more with the Trimble vision and also the equipment on site. So some of your measuring equipment and stuff is now incorporating BIM. So Tekla produces BIM drawings that can then be elevated straight onto site for the construction site. So you can generate vision information modelling on site.
Yeah. So you're producing a paper drawing then for every hole to be punched or whatever.
So for argument's sake, this is now the drawing that this will produce. So that there is one of the fabrication drawings that will go through to the workshop.
Yeah.
So on here we've got a detail of each element of part that is welded on. So we know what the material is, the grade of the material, so that when we come to purchase it, we know we're getting the right grade of material, the length, the area, the weight, and then all of this will form the assembly item. So we know that the weight of that assembly item is 65.3 kilo. And if we zoom back out, James, the actual fabricated item, each one of these has got a mark, then marks. Yeah, and then we will fabricate. So when we go back to where we was looking at the parts being made, each one of them parts has got an F number, or that F number effectively then bolts on, then welds on to the fabricated item. And that, as an example, is the drawing that I just showed you in the workshop.
Yes. So that could obviously go to a CNC machine or a plasma cutter, that type of detail.
It could.
But you're doing that manually for the moment.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Create files to export the references, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we do that with Z purlins. We will produce a file that we send off to the manufacturer of the Z purlins, and they will put every single hole exactly where we want it.
Okay. And as part of the certification then, those drawings need to be maintained, do they, in terms of the detailing or what was done or what was made?
Yeah, well every single fabrication drawing that we've got has got not just each part and positioning, but it's got each weld and what weld type it is and the size of weld. So when the fabricated item is fabricated and is then checked by one of the guys that are checking it, that fabrication drawing, for argument's sake, will then be kept signed off, and we keep that for a number of years then. So if there is ever a problem, we can identify exactly what part it was, when it was fabricated, from what steel, from what country, what weld was used, what roll of MIG wire was used, and who did it. So we can trace that back. So if there is ever a problem, we've got a route of finding the cause.
Did you graduate to using this? Like, were you kind of pen and paper when you started 13, 14 years ago?
No, we've sort of had this system running since we started. The system has got better and better.
I came here and started using straight away.
Right.
I was 26 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
I came here and we started doing it straight away.
Yes.
I started trying to use this package. There is an element of it I can do. I'm obviously better than these guys in here, but so fast. But no, it's quite a user-friendly package.
Yeah.
But it is very complex.
Yeah.
It's very involved. You know, there's a lot to it.
So Trimble is Tekla is a Trimble product.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
And also SketchUp, if anybody's heard of SketchUp.
Yeah.
I think some of SketchUp now is starting to look similar to this. Yeah, so it's all of a similar product, doing a similar thing.
The other thing that I'm finding quite good with as this product sort of evolves is if we look at the entire building there, we've got the ability to sort of zoom in at everything, but every single product is on there. From this point, if you've got a particular client, and I think this will come if it's not already a thing, if we go onto the visualizer, they've started producing a visualization model by where you can take this to the customer and you can visualize it in this case, the grey cladding and the slightly greyer roof with the concrete panels with the floor in it, the doors, and it gives you a feel of what that building's going to be like on site. I think it'll get to a stage a little bit like probably when people are designing kitchens nowadays. You can put a headset on and you can almost walk through this.
Yeah.
You can't do that now.
Yeah, no reason not to.
There we go then, yeah. So that's really good when you've got a client that wants to see how it sort of feels on site, or somebody that can't really visualise what it's going to look like when it's done.
For example, when I learned it was black on white line, no rendering, no anything, and this is all over the years. This is all evolved.
The other thing that I like about the products as well, it does do clash detection. So if you try to draw something beyond where it can be, or where it thinks this, or something else has already been drawn, it will flag it up as that won't work. It basically knows it's thinking for itself. It knows that it won't fit.
Very good. No, impressive use of technology.
It is, and it is fantastic, and we'd be lost without it.
Yeah.
We couldn't produce the volume of buildings that we produce without a package as good as this one.
I see, yeah, I can understand.
What I can do in a day, maybe a day and a half, it used to take a team of craftsmen a week to do.
Yeah, insane amount of time, yeah. Very good,
Yeah.
thank you.